Yeah. There's a judge in Alameda County. Yeah. Yeah. That teaches you real fast. Seen some guys lose some expensive phones.
That's not right, though. then he sells them on eBay, huh?
Yeah, right, I know. Yeah, come on, Judge. I was only texting. Okay, 6 o'clock. You guys ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December Planning Commission meeting for San Bernardino County. Let's begin by rising and pledging our allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The roll call's noted. Okay, each month at the Planning Commission meetings, we set aside time to hear from the public for items that are not otherwise going to be discussed on the agenda. Are there any public comment items like that? If there's not, public comments closed. Let's turn our attention to the consent agenda, which consists of the acknowledgement of public hearing notice, the acknowledgement of certificate of posting, and the minutes of October 16th, 2013. Are there any questions from the commissioners regarding those three items? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The first item is number 4, and that's the 2014 Planning Commission meeting calendar. Any questions for staff of the regarding the calendar? If there's not, is there a motion to approve the 2014 Planning Commission calendar?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Number 5. This is the what we've been calling the Recovery Park. The applicant is San Bernardino County, and I believe we will start with
Yes.
Byron.
Thank you. This item is the Resource Recovery Park Zone Change 10-171. Want to make sure that everyone in the public and the Planning Commission has ample time to review all the documents. So we are going to request today that after a brief staff report and that we request that the Planning Commission open the public hearing and take public comment and then continue the public hearing to January 15th. Now, we're available for questions as well, but because of the complicated nature of this project, we want to make sure that everyone has ample time to review the documents that you have. We know it's a lot of information that you just received, and the public just made available to the public.
Okay.
So with that said, there's really two aspects to this project. One is to create a new zoning designation that's entitled RRP, Resource Recovery Park, and the second is then apply that zoning designation to 30 acres that's adjacent to John Smith landfill across from John Smith Road. Specific uses in the RRP have not necessarily been determined. However, the RRP is intended to provide increased opportunities for materials recycling and to utilize energy resources associated with the landfill. It is done this way due to public involvement in the project. Originally, this project included a general plan amendment and a zone change from agricultural to industrial. Because industrial zoning opens up many other possibly non-desirable uses, we wanted to limit the scope of what could go at the site by creating this new Resource Recovery Park zone. All uses in the RRP are subject to additional review, either administratively, which will be completely public noticed as well, or through a use permit at the Planning Commission. All uses, fruit uses, are also subject to their own CEQA analysis as well. The CEQA analysis deals with the zone change and the zoning, but it doesn't deal with the specific use that might be applied for. They will have their own permitting process and their own CEQA process as we go through the filling out the park. Just to point out, composting, landfill, long-term storage, hazardous materials are all prohibited as part of this zone, to give you an idea of what the difference between RRP and industrial is. There are also significant development standards that apply only to the Resource Recovery Park zone, such as increased setback requirements, landscaping, and screening of the uses. Like I said, we will be asking for a continuance this evening, but it is staff's recommendation in January, and the staff recommendation that you have in your staff report is that the Planning Commission review the staff report, hold a public hearing, and hear all proponents and opponents of the proposed project. Staff will then recommend that the Planning Commission do the following. Number one, review the revised final environmental impact report and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. And number two, review the Planning Commission Resolution number 2013-02, recommending that the Board of Supervisors approve of the new zoning district, Resource Recovery Park overlay, and zone change 1071, subject to the conditions of approval and the findings found in the report. So I'm available for questions. Steve Witry is here if you have questions about the road, and Mandy Rose, our integrated waste manager, is also here for questions about resource recovery in general. And so that concludes our presentation, and we're available for questions.
Thank you, Byron. Before we go any further, are there any questions for the director from the commissioners? Okay, if there are none, we typically start with the applicants. So Steve or Mandy, is there anything that you would like to add in addition to what Byron has just laid out? Okay, let's open it up for public comment then on the Resource Recovery Park. If there are going to be any folks speaking tonight, we'd ask that you state your name clearly. Can you, I'm sorry, sir, can you pull the mic closer to you? Yeah, it's for TV. Thanks.
I've been a resident here in Hollister for about 3 years. A couple years ago, I had a chance to work for Earthbound Farms, and just found out there was just a whole lot of trash that was going out. For instance, there was 700 tons, and out of that 700 tons, we would take out 500 tons of recycling material and leaving only like 250 or 200 tons of just trash. So I think it's something that we really need. I mean, that's just Earthbound Farms alone. So you can imagine all the other, farmers and all the other packaging companies and all the material that they might have. So that's basically it, and that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other speaker cards?
Yes. Plan sheet?
You don't necessarily have to have already filled out a speaker card, but if you have, then you'll be called.
Hi, I own a company called Universal Recycling Solutions in San Ramon, and we handle material from the East Bay to the Peninsula and South San Jose. And I have another business which is pulling up plastic, is agricultural film. And when I've known actually Mandy and talked to her for many years, and also a gentleman named Alan Stiles from Salinas Solid Waste. Probably for 10 years we've been trying to recycle agricultural film. And to get an idea of the growers, actually an associate of mine is Dan, who just spoke. He's in the Hollister area, and he's well aware of all the farmers that collect film. And if you look on their fields, they're actually sitting a lot of the plastic sitting on the field, and they either don't want to dump it because it's too costly, or they're waiting for something so they can recycle it. So I have experience in washing material, not at a great volume, and I don't want to promise anybody I'll take all their film like a lot of companies have done. But, you know, the growers have ag film, drip tape, colored mulch film, greenhouse film, hoop film, shrink wrap, plastic film. They have rigid plastics, buckets, barrels, jugs, and things of that nature that make it to the landfill. And not only do the growers have that, but businesses and schools, they don't recycle as well either. They have majority of cardboard, paper, catalogs, files, magazines, bottles, cans, and so forth, and also wood pallets, and clean wood, dirty wood, and so forth. The packing houses, they have overruns. They have mislabeled and out-of-date packaging, supplies. I'd worked with Salinas, the MRF down there, and how much stuff comes into the MRF that's actually dumped into the landfill. And I'm sure it happens here too, but I understand most of the plastic is now being held on their farm and not dumped. So you don't see those big numbers of plastic being dumped, but it's out there because Dan knows quite a few of the growers and farmers around here, and that's what they're doing. They're begging him to see if we can get rid of this stuff for them. So speaking to Mandy about the Resource Recovery Park, it's just an ideal thing for your county. I think Salinas has something going on right now with the wash line. I don't know if it's up and running yet, but they're taking material, hopefully from farmers too. To get an idea, with one wash line, and we plan on probably putting like 3 or 4 in, it will consume 500 tons a month for one wash line. So you got 2 or 3 of them running at the same time, so you can have about 1,500 tons a month of plastic, mulch film, and so forth. There's more mulch film around here than anything else. And then we talk about drip tape. There's probably a couple hundred to 400 tons a month of drip tape during the season, and that's sitting out on the farms too. Just by driving around, you can see a bunch of the film out there and the tape. If you're not familiar with it, what happens is that the tape runs underneath to water the vegetables or fruits or whatever they got going, and then the mulch film's on top of the mound. So when they pull the film, they pull the drip tape too. And then you got.
We'll give you a little bit more time to finish up. That's okay.
Okay.
Not
And
much.
then the greenhouses, the hoop films, the berry guys, they have a lot of film that they dispose of too. So, job opportunities for this type of business normally runs 10 employees to each wash line. So you got 2 or 3. And then, of course, you need drivers, truck drivers, mechanics, laborers, and so forth to run this business. There's other stuff that I'm running out of time here, but there's other material that I want to pick up too that wouldn't include the wash line, but would include mixed recyclables. So tonnage-wise, it's huge. You're probably going to do tens of thousands of tons a year just by having the availability to the farmers to pull that film out of there. So, but anyways,
Yeah.
sorry I ran out of time.
No, that was very useful information. Thank you very much for coming down.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Speaker.
Commissioner Pierce, he has a question
back
for you,
up.
sir, if you can go back to the mic.
You've probably done the homework on this. What's the cost of the infrastructure to set up these lines on the raw land that the county would provide?
Well, you know, it's hard to, running from scratch, it's tough. I know the cost of equipment and so forth, it'd probably run about $600,000 per machine. But when you're running with a property that you need to put the pads in, you need to have a structure and so forth. Matter of fact, we took a ride over there to the landfill, and there was a structure there, and I don't know exactly where it's going to be, where the area is going to be, but it does need some work, I mean, to get this type of equipment and stuff in there. But once it's in, it's self-contained, and it's a loop system where it recycles the water. There is a discharge of sand and dirt. It's minimal, but it could be used for two things. It's actually topsoil. So when the farmers pull up the film, the dirt that sticks on there, that's actually topsoil. So it actually can be sold back to the farmers or given to the farmers to spread back onto their property if they wish. And but cost-wise, it's real difficult to tell you exactly what it would cost.
Are you prepared to go in and set in the infrastructure?
Yes. Yeah. I actually have a partner coming from New Zealand in March that has a wash line up and running there, and we would probably partner with him. The idea here is that we would probably supply the plastic to these companies. And I know quite a few companies, because I've been doing this for 15 years, pulling up what they call fumigation film. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but they fumigate before they actually put the crops in for the strawberries. And that's a clear with a red line in it, with a glue line. So we probably move about 300 or 400 containers of that a year, and I've been doing it for a long time. So down here there's more mulch film, which is your black film, green film, brown film, your greenhouse film, and then your drip tape. So all the material we can move. It's we also plan on repelletizing the material. After you wash and clean it, it becomes clean plastic again, so you repelletize it and you make things with the pellets. So they can be sold, the pellets, domestically normally, and the drip tape could either be cleaned, washed, and sold here too, or exported. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir, again. Good information. Next speaker, do you have any more cards?
One more. Brian Smith?
My name is Brian Smick with Biovessel Technologies. We are a anaerobic digestion company from San Jose, California. We are in the business of turning organics into energy through proprietary bacteria. I don't know if you're familiar with AD, but it's a closed loop system where we have all natural bacteria that breaks down food waste. And we bought some property here on Shore Road maybe last year looking to put a large scale. We've been successful on the small scale AD through enterprise such as grocery stores. So we're looking to do the 100 to 1,000 ton a day facilities. We purchased some property on Shore Road, 62 acres organic farm that we plan to do this project. Came down, I spoke to Byron. He referred me to Mandy Rose. She mentioned the recovery park as a viable option to have a AD facility where we can take organics only, no MSW, convert that into electricity, compressed natural gas, send it back to the grid, fuel vehicles, many byproducts from our process. Since the feedstock is controlled and it is all natural, there is no byproduct. We use our liquid fertilizer, comes out the other end, it goes back into the soils at different grades. So it's a complete closed loop system. So the 30 acres at the recovery park would be an ideal site for us to create jobs directly and indirectly. And the project could accommodate 100 to 1,000 tons a day. We could divert some organics from the landfill, up to 75, 100 tons of the organics, combine it with our controlled feedstock, and in return make the byproduct of the energy and the fertilizer, which goes back into the soils and sold to the local farmers, wholesale, retail, and so forth. So we do have a design, and we started on some of the RFP work. I understand there's another RFP coming out soon, which we're looking forward to grabbing in January. And the 30 acres available would be ideal for us to come in and build a 100-ton facility, which would convert these organics, divert from the landfill, create jobs, and ultimately create energy and fertilizer.
Are you done?
Sure.
Okay, sorry. So if you did go to the Resource Recovery Park, you would not pursue Shore Road development?
We would like to pursue Shore Road. That was our initial intention, since it is certified organic, all 62 acres already. The Recover Park, since Mandy and I communicated last year, thought it would be a good proof of concept to do it for the county, to show that it can be done at the county level. But the Recovery Park and Shore Road would like to be done concurrently if we could.
So you would do both?
We want to do both, yes.
Wow,
Shore
okay.
Road was the initial goal, and that would do 50 to 100 tons per day. We have a design for the Recovery Park up to 1,000 tons a day, and that's continuous batch anaerobic digestion, so it would be very, very helpful in both locations.
Wow.
And we have plenty of feedstock from your local farmers, from Usugi Farms to Del Monte Foods to Del Mar Foods, who process and have 15, 20, 50 tons a day of residuals. Where do they go? What gets left in the fields? That's all energy for us, and it's all fertilizer for us. So as long as we stay out of the MSW space and control our feedstock, which we plan to do, closed loop system, which will produce good energy, high methane, and good fertilizer.
Pretty exciting. Any questions for the speaker?
Yeah, I have a question. So your byproduct of your composting, so the methane gas, there's no spillage at all? This is a completely closed, sealed loop system
It's
without any
absence
spillage.
of oxygen, so it has to be closed loop, absolutely. Then out the other end, after the material is spent, let's just say, after it goes through its 28-day retention period, it turns into a natural resource, which we refine and put back on the market for wholesale for fertilizers of different NPKs for both home and garden, and wholesale for the farmers. Get the chemicals out of the soils, and all the GMOs eventually is the goal here, because we're all eating it. It's all in the foods. Whether you like it or not, it's there. So we're trying to help that cause too, by getting some of these farmers to convert to organic. Average farmer has 10% organics, and we're trying to get that numbers growing every year by 10, 15%. So the need is there, and the Recovery Park would be a great site for us, and it would not impact the traffic or any of the studies that have been done currently. So we're ready to go if you're ready to go.
Great. Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Sounds like good stuff. No more speaker cards? Is there anyone else from the public who would like to say anything about the Resource Recovery Park? Tammy?
Tammy Jackson, 3503 John Smith Road. I just have a couple questions. After listening to everyone speak, those are all great ideas, and we definitely need to start moving more towards recycling and resource recovery parks. But I still don't understand why we're pursuing this project out in the country. We're taking, I believe, we were told 3/4 of our garbage comes from out of town. So we're trucking things across our county, polluting our air, which is a nice country community. And ruining our roads from 25 to Shore to Fraser Lake to Fairview to John Smith. Our roads are just destroyed. And this may be a quick buck right now, but in the future, how are we going to repair the roads and take care of all the traffic congestion? Have a question about the anaerobic digestives. Don't those smell? There's no smell at all from any of the fertilizer or anything, any of your products?
Done anaerobically and fermented in tanks like a winery feed, so it's sucked in and fermented in double insulated tanks.
Okay.
Completely anaerobic.
Yeah.
None
So
of these
this-
comments will be on the record, so we need to make
Right.
sure.
Yeah, rather than have him come up, I was just going to say, so he just answered Tammy's question by saying there's no smell as a byproduct because essentially it's a closed loop.
Yeah, because that's our only concern. That was one of all the neighboring properties' concern was with working with Byron and everyone else talking about not doing the composting was a smell. So, but again, I still feel like there's been no numbers thrown out over all these years that we've asked. Someone, you had originally talked about the Resource Recovery Park being several different businesses. Well, one person can't go in and put in half a storm drain and half a building and half a parking lot. The whole infrastructure has to be redone, or done, period. So then is it my understanding that now we're looking at one company to come in and take the whole 30 acres? And was the EIR figured for that amount of traffic? You're talking about the amount of tons you're talking about coming in is exactly what the dump has now. And I
Okay.
think that it said 1,200 cars, is that right, for the dump? Is that what the EIR said? So that means that 433 is a very low estimate of what you guys have come up with for the Resource Recovery Park. I want to make sure that that's been taken into consideration. I know our numbers keep dwindling for people who are against this. Again, this is the week before Christmas. We were notified late. We still have a lot of opposition to this project, and I think that it still needs to be looked at. I just feel like the county can't really handle what they have now. The road conditions are horrible just from the dump. The garbage still sits on the side of the road. It's dangerous for bikers and joggers, and none of that has been fixed. And all you're going to do is continue adding more traffic and more dangerous situations on that road.
Okay, Tammy, just by way of follow-up to what you just said, you heard at the very beginning we're going to take this up again in January.
Yes.
So to the extent that you have friends and neighbors and others that aren't here tonight that would like to be,
Right,
please
for January.
please invite them on our behalf to attend January's meeting. And then one point you brought up, and I saw the previous speaker kind of nod in affirmation, is that if that were to work out, Mandy, it would be a single tenant at the recovery park. And that's question part A. And then question part B is, if, I'm sorry, the name of your company, sir? Can you just?
Biovessel Technologies.
Bio what?
Biovessel.
BioVessel?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so let's say that hypothetically, BioVessel Technologies, Inc. is a single tenant at the recovery park, because I'm assuming she's going to say yes, that would be a single tenant, because he wants 30 acres. Would they then have to go through a separate approval process that you referenced at the very beginning in your comments, consisting of CEQA and a whole analysis for that type of business?
Each tenant will have to go through, regardless of...
Whether there's 4 or 1?
Yeah, each tenant will have to go through a permitting process individually.
Okay.
And I have a part C, if we could add a question for Mandy. So if one person came in and took all 30 acres, can you guys then turn around and take the 100 that was originally slated for the dump and continue the Resource Recovery Park? Or is the way this is set up is only 30 will ever be resource recovery and 100 will be dump?
That's a good question for the director.
Not without going back through this process that we've been going through with the zone change to apply that designation to additional property. Right now, it's been limited to those 30 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, but it is possible that it could.
Yes.
You can apply for a zone change there or any place else in the county.
Okay, thanks, Tammy. Mandy, anything you want to add?
Sure, thank you. I think a couple things, and the main thing would be, obviously, what's before the Planning Commission and will be before the Board of Supervisors is the project is a zone change and not specific projects.
Right.
Although we do have some interest, there was, I'll use the word concern, I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but it's a word I will use, that some individuals like, you're building this and nobody wants to come here. Well, we have had interest, and so I felt it was important that those who have expressed interest, came and displayed that interest to you, so you would know that that was real. And then I would add to that there is a requirement to go through a request for proposal process that Brian from BioVessel Technologies acknowledged. Anyone I've spoken to has been told that. And so there'll be a process that the board will make the decision who, what, when, where, how much. So when the RFP goes out, whatever we get back, there'll be, whatever, there'll be criteria, obviously, that will be published at the time and how that will come forward. And so that's, I think that's all we know at this point. I don't think we can't second guess what, the board's going to agree or not agree to.
Sure. Yeah, and that's why I was careful to say hypothetically should, because that's, I realize we're light years away, hopefully not light years, but we're a ways away from even selecting one tenant or 4 or 5, but I think it's important for the community to know that that will be a separate process. Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Culler.
Just food for thought. My understanding about the resource recovery park is it's supposed to divert. Thank you. My understanding is the resource recovery park is intended to divert materials from ending up in the dump. I don't know how much of the feedstock the that he's talking about actually makes it to the dump, or if it just sits out in the fields and rots and gets tilled under. And if that business would actually do what the RRP is intended to do, which is to get, metals and all that stuff from getting buried.
Right.
So, something to look at down the road as well.
Down the road, yeah. And I think that's kind of Mandy's point. Is she just, as I understood what her comment, she just wanted to show that there is kind of an interest in what the county or what the board's trying to accomplish with this resource recovery park, and there is a demand for it, as we heard from the other gentleman from San Ramon with the plastics. So, okay, that's the last speaker card then. We already finished the last speaker card. Anyone else from the public? Like, yes, ma'am. Can you just please hand your speaker card to staff and then state your name clearly into the microphone, please?
My name is Barbara. Today I'm at 575 Heatherwood Estates Drive. I had two real important questions. For the gentleman who spoke about the 60 acres and then doing the 30 acres at the recovery park. Do you have any air quality reports that we can see, since you said you have a facility already in San Jose, so we can see what the air quality would be?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it would be more efficient use of our time. We're not getting into an analyzation of that business as being appropriate there or not. It was solely for the purpose of saying that there are people in the community.
Right, but what I'm
We
trying to...
don't need to know air quality about a particular use because we're not even there yet.
But I'm saying when we get down the line, I think that should be considered.
Absolutely.
To see what the air quality is in the current site that he's at.
Sure.
To look at the air quality in our area. And that doesn't mean taking the air quality readings and put them at May's school, but actually put them on site.
Right.
That's a concern. And also, for both of the gentlemen, how much traffic are they expecting to go up and down John Smith? That needs to be considered, since nothing's been done about the road yet at all. But I was just real concerned about that, the air quality, actually seeing the location that they're at now and looking at their air quality reports.
Thank you. And again, just as the director affirmed a moment ago, each individual tenant, if this project goes forward, would be subject to a separate approval, which would include a CEQA analysis that would consider air quality and all those other things. Each prospective tenant. Anyone else from the public?
I didn't fill out a card, I apologize. Good evening, my name is Anthony Nicola, and I have an interest in this Resource Recovery Park project. I'm in the process of commissioning a commercial-scale biodiesel plant, and I would like to establish this business, Greenheart Biofuels, at the proposed Resource Recovery Park location. Greenheart Biofuels manufactures ASTM-spec biodiesel using waste cooking oils as its primary feedstock. Biodiesel is a clean-burning, renewable, sustainable, locally sourced American fuel that is poised to be the major player in the future of transportation energy. It benefits American farmers, American businesses, and the national economy. Job creation, new markets for domestic agricultural products, and keeping our energy dollars local are just a few of the many economic benefits gained from using biodiesel over its petroleum counterpart. Biodiesel requires commonly used industrial ingredients to manufacture and has a relatively simple production process. The end product burns 78% cleaner, according to the EPA, than number 2 diesel. I would like to share that this legal structure of this organization is that of a B corporation. The B stands for benefit. As of October 2011, the state of California passed AB 361, making the B corporation the newest form of legal organization in the state, marking a new pathway by which to define successful business. Modern-day business is the most powerful man-made force on the planet. By declaring B Corp status with this project, we will be voluntarily, legally binding ourselves to higher standards of environmental stewardship and humanitarian awareness, thereby harnessing the power of private enterprise to create maximum public benefit. B Corp certification is to sustainable business what fair trade certification is to coffee, or USDA organic certification is to milk. B Corps are certified by the nonprofit B Lab to meet rigorous standards of social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. The wheels are in motion, equipment is being acquired, financing is being secured. My crucial next step is finding a location. Once a permit is issued, the plant can be fully operational within 12 months. In the first year of production, 4 full-time, fully benefited jobs will be created, and approximately 2 million gallons of biodiesel will be produced. And this is projected to double in the following fiscal year. In my journey of searching where I was going to locate this plant, I came across the path of Mr. Anthony Botello and Mandy Rose, and they enlightened me to this potential rezoning project here in San Benito. And this is why I'm here, to share a little bit about my vision and to ask that this resource recovery park is seen quickly to completion. Greenheart Biofuels, an energy company that has aligned itself as a benefit corporation, is something that is unprecedented in history. Energy companies are typically voraciously profit-driven, with little regard to the environment or future sustainability. With demand constantly increasing for petroleum and questionable, often desperate practices such as fracking the Monterey Shale being brought forward, this organization would stand out brightly as a beacon of hope, displacing petroleum diesel gallon for gallon with the renewable, clean-burning American fuel. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, if I may ask, where are you from?
I'm from Salinas.
From Salinas. Oh, it sounds like you have an exciting business underway. Any questions for the speaker? Yes, Commissioner Pierce.
So your company is located in Salinas, Monterey County.
No, it currently doesn't have a home.
Okay.
This is a startup business.
It's a startup business. So
Yes.
you've got 2 million gallons a year. Do you actually, you're going to sell it within the county so we receive sales tax from this?
Yes. Initially, from the get-go, contracts with major oil distributors out of San Jose will be sought to meet kind of our bottom-end volume to keep our head above water. Once that's established, then yes, we'll be selling to as many local farmers and ranchers as we can here and in Salinas Valley.
Mm-hmm. But the majority will be sold out of county, so we won't receive the sales tax on that.
In the beginning, the majority will, yes, but over time, the local sales are more profitable because we're taking out about 2 or 3 middlemen selling directly to the farmer. So that is our end game.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yes. Shorty. Shorty, if you could just state your name for the tape as well. We all know you, but for the record.
I'm Shorty Silva. I live pretty much adjacent to the proposed RRP. It seems like tonight we've got everybody fighting for position, wanting all the property in the resource recovery park. There's been no discussion if anyone has spoken of, is there going to be returned to the county for these? The businesses that have spoken up, I would have assumed, being private businesses, they've done some kind of return on investment. They should know approximately what their costs would be on the infrastructure. And so far, there's been no numbers thrown forward. The county has not come forward and said, this is what we're selling the property for, this is what we're leasing the property for.
Right.
So I'm just wondering what the benefit to the county is monetarily.
Okay.
You know, Resource Recovery Park, nobody's going to argue the benefits of it, but the county, as Mr. Pierce was saying, if we do our recycling and do all that stuff and sell it out of county, we have no income from the sales tax. So our only income from Resource Recovery Park would be the rent or lease or whatever it is, and there's been no discussion of that if there is a positive cash flow to the county.
That's a good question. Let's get an answer. Mandy, can you address the question of whether, I assume there's going to be long-term leases to these tenants or tenant? And if so, have you had any discussions with the board about ranges for potential rent, lease payments? How's that all work?
I think the short answer is no, because this will all be vetted through the RFP process, and I would direct anyone who's interested to page 1-3 of the EIR document. Last place, under project summary, last sentence, it is anticipated the county may license, lease, sell, or jointly operate portions of the RRP project site to third parties for development and operation of facilities consistent with the purpose. And so that will all fall out of the RFP process, you know, and that's why I was alluding to earlier, when we put that RFP together, obviously it'll be critical that the county defines what it's looking for and where it's willing to negotiate, et cetera.
Okay.
And, but those things have not been defined yet. You know, there is an RFP we put out before. It's a matter of public record. Actually, it was in the first document. I imagine the next one will look similar, but we'll probably refine it a little bit further about criteria of how we will rate, the different projects.
So just to make sure I heard you clearly then.
Sure.
So as to whether the county or the supervisors sell the fee title of a portion of the resource recovery park, or do a license, or do a long-term lease, those questions haven't been specifically decided yet by
No,
the board.
what the document allows for, all of those options,
all three.
but yes, but it has not been decided, no.
So Shorty, did you hear her? They haven't even decided whether they're going to sell this land to different tenants or lease it to them, or much
It could
less
be a
what
combination.
the lease amounts will be. So just check with your supervisor, I guess, see if they have any ideas. But I guess that information is just not available right now. Well, I mean, if you want to come ask the question.
I'm not sure how to answer that. The project is a zone change, and you have to change the zoning in order for individuals to come forward to tell you they want to put their business there. So it's just like any other project that comes before the Planning Commission. If it's not zoned currently for that type of project, they have to go through a zone change, or they'd have to go through some kind of either a conditional use permit or something else, and the county would determine whether or not they want that project.
And for CMAP in the record, the question was, why are we considering a zone change prior to finding out whether it's a viable project?
And
and
that's-
that was the question that
Yeah, that's
Mandy just answered.
the
So.
sequence, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Okay, if not, then we will stop public comment for tonight, but public comment on this agenda item is not closed. Instead, we will continue the conversation in January. Invite your friends and neighbors if anyone is interested in this topic. But having said that, and just kind of stopping the public participation, are there any remaining questions from the commissioners of staff or anyone for now? Or County Council, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I just want to indicate that that we would like to continue the public. We would like to continue the public hearing open until the January 15th date at 6 p.m.
Yeah, okay.
I have a comment.
Sure, and that's our intent, is to provide you notice right now that we're going to take.
I'm just saying the people that aren't here.
Oh, sure.
They said, I got it in the mail yesterday, my neighbor got it today.
Okay, Byron, do you intend to recirculate notice for January?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if we can.
Pardon?
I mean, we can, we have legally noticed this. We can make as much effort as we can to make sure that we get everyone here. Again, that's why we're opening up tonight and continuing it, is to get maximum public participation.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Yes,
a question.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
I have a question. I went through the whole thing there. There's nothing about, I'll be talking about recycling, about the environment. But I think one of the conditions to be put on there, if this happens, that this park gets approved, maybe all the trucks running into that park should be clean air to help on the air quality in that area. You know, because the Clean Air Act's been in effect since 2008. It's not enforced. You know, running clean air trucks maybe into the landfill in the future.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
that's one of the conditions that should be set.
Any other questions or comments?
I've got a few comments, especially after listening to some of the possible applicants. I just see the area, I'm in favor of a resolution to amend the county zoning ordinance to create a new zoning called Resource Recovery Park, RRP zoning. But I feel that area out there is ag use, and predominantly ag use surrounding the area, is just the wrong place for this. Part of it, I just sort of felt like that a little bit until I heard that we're going to have a 2 million gallon production plant of gasoline and petroleum out there. And if something was to happen, it would be too far away from the existing infrastructure. If something catastrophic was to happen, that it could be an even larger event. Same thing with biomethane. I mean, methane's explosive too. I'm familiar with both of them. I've played around with both of them myself at home. Nothing happened negatively, but it was in small elements. So I'm in favor of the new zoning. I just think that this area is the wrong area for this.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just one comment on what Commissioner Pierce said. There is a big difference between gasoline and biodiesel. You know, biodiesel is something you could actually taste and it wouldn't hurt you, and it's not an explosive compound unless certain conditions are set, you know, pressure and vapor and all that stuff, unlike gasoline, which is dangerous.
Okay. If those are all of the commissioner comments, we've heard from the public. I think that's all we can do for December. Is there a motion to continue this agenda item to the, what was the date, Barbara? January
15th.
January 15th.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
If you could continue the public hearing till January 15th at 6 p.m. That way the public hearing remains open.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Second it.
Commissioner Lowe has moved to continue the public hearing on this agenda item to January 15th at 6 p.m. right here. And there's a second from Commissioner Pierce. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all for your comments and your input, especially those of you who traveled here tonight to tell us about your business opportunities. Number 6, use permit 1080-13. The owner is Harlan Smith Trust. And the planner is Michael Kelly. Michael.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Michael Kelly, Associate Planner, and here to talk about use permit 1080-13. And this is to the proposal.
Michael?
Yes.
Why don't you stretch your arms a little bit and let these folks kind of funnel out.
Okay.
So we can hear you better. All right, a little bit quieter, thank you.
So this is use permit 1080-13 to, this is where it's located, behind me, on 2641 School Road to install 12 antennas and co-locate them on an existing monopole that's on a hilltop there at the property. It would be these antennas on a pole where there is an existing installation there. One installation is the pole with one level of antennas on it. This would add a second level of antennas below it. 12 antennas, about 8 feet tall each, but up on the hill. There would be other equipment installed along with them on the mounting on the pole behind the antennas, and there would be equipment on the ground, generator equipment, cabinets, various other related things. Oh, also GPS units, global positioning units below, and fencing and gating around the base there with the equipment. And this is on School Road. As I said, it's on a hilltop. It would be, you know, I might point out, I have these illustrations of the property, this kind of pie-shaped property that runs upward from School Road, and close up on the part of the east edge of the site where it would happen, and the layout on the site of where these would be. And at the top you see cabinets, and then at the bottom there is the pole itself and the generator. And here are the antennas as they would be laid out on the pole, just in triangular fashion there. Getting a little closer there and seeing the various equipment that would be there. And this is how it would look as in elevation view, with the installation above it and this one level below it. And as I said, it's on a hilltop. It is visible from Highway 129 as you approach River Oaks from the two different directions, from Santa Cruz County and from 101, but very distantly. And there is, of course, already the installation there, so to have a second installation below it might not be that great of a change compared with what it is now. The earlier installation was approved in 2001, so that's been there for 12 years. And what else might I say about that? Well, anyway, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve it with the findings in the staff report and the conditions of approval in the staff report. And if you have any questions, I'm available.
I have a few, but I'd like to hear from other commissioners if there are any questions. No?
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner.
I just have one. In most of these installations we see, we have a tree shape or something that tries to blend a little better. I know Lloyd and his brother actually is right over the property line next to him in a motorhome, and I don't see that there are going to be any complaints from those two. But I've also driven up that road, and that's a real blatantly obvious array, just as is. Now you're increasing the size. I was kind of wondering if the county had a standard or something on these to where we have sort of a beautification or a tree or a windmill or something that would mellow it out a little.
Well, those, by the ordinance that's in effect, are favored, but it kind of comes down to how it's proposed and whether it, how it relates to the site there right now. And there is already the monopole that's not in a sort of a stealth type design, such as a false tree, but it is this right now.
So it was just sort of was already like that, so we're just hanging some more on there and...
Yeah.
Okay. And if we wanted to change that, we'd actually have to set up a new ordinance or...
Oh, well, yeah.
No.
Well...
No, you don't have to set up a new ordinance.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, there's no requirement in our ordinance to employ the stealth trees, but this commission has required it as a condition of approval on other trees in the past. Usually the ones we get, the new poles, are designed to be stealth already. But there is one, I can think of at least one instance where it was not designed that way and the commission required it to be. That's one off of Buena Vista Road. I don't know with this one, since it's already there, what the logistics would be and if that's even possible to convert it into a stealth.
Is there someone from AT&T here tonight?
Yes, we're here.
You're here? Okay. Because that was going to be my question to Commissioner Pierce, whether there's an opportunity to convert this to a tree tower.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
I was going to ask that question also.
Okay. Sounds like it's on the minds of the commission. So before we get to that question, Michael, I was unclear. That's just a slide of what you've given us, correct? What exactly is existing today in that drawing?
The top.
The top?
Yeah, the top part is, you can see the mouse pointer there. The top part is what's existing and the pole itself.
So
and
everything that's shaded kind of darker gray is
right.
new?
Right.
Okay.
That would be added, including the equipment down below.
There's a little kind of something at the bottom of the pole, though, right? Like a power source or a generator or something down there?
Generator, equipment cabinets, and various connection sorts of apparatus, and fencing and gate. Plus a concrete pad to seat it.
Okay. If there's no other questions from Michael, I imagine it would be appropriate to hear from AT&T. And if I could kind of focus your comments to the question of whether or not there's an opportunity present to configure this cellular tower in the form of a tree tower now, understanding that it hasn't been in the past, but maybe it was less intrusive in the past, and should we or could we do it now? And I know tree towers are more expensive to telecommunications company. And I know, therefore, they like to avoid doing tree towers when they can. But we do have the ability to say, well, we want a tree tower. And this is in my district, so I know School Road pretty well. It's a pretty area. Okay, ma'am? Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dr. Betty Saxon. I am the area manager for AT&T on the Central Coast. So I wanted to also let you know I'm joined by two members of my team, Tom Durkis, who is the project manager and who worked with staff on the permitting process. And also we have Lynn Bruno, who's a specialist with Hammett and Edison, which is the RF emission study. That's an independent firm. So in case you had questions along those lines. The first thing to address about the tower in and of itself, AT&T does not own this tower. AT&T is co-locating onto a facility where we're leasing space to be on there. The reason that we thought it would be better to co-locate is that it's less intrusive than building a second tower because we're trying to achieve a coverage objective. So that area has been determined to be a dark spot for AT&T. So when we go out and we look at the various places about where we could place a tower, one of the first things we always try to do is to co-locate on a facility, because most jurisdictions now are asking us to co-locate rather than have a Verizon or a Sprint or you know, have 5 towers in one area trying to go for a coverage objective. So the answer to the immediate question is no, because we don't own this facility.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but who does?
Would you tell me again who owns the facility? Tom's going to come up and help me with some of these questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
I'm Tom Durkis with Forza Telecom. The owner of the facility is SBA Communications. The tenant at the top of the facility that started the actual facility was Sprint Nextel. They owned it originally when they constructed it in 2001. They subsequently, it has been sold 2 times since. So the current owner of the actual tower facility and the ground lease of the equipment and the tower itself is SBA Communications. They're a tower company.
And I'm not sure the proper vernacular in your line of work, but are you even a tenant?
I beg your pardon?
Is AT&T therefore a tenant? Or what's the proper term for what you are then relative to SBA Communications?
We would be a tenant.
A tenant.
Yes.
Are there other tenants on this tower?
Sprint Nextel at the top.
So they used to own it, and now
They
they're
used
just
to
a
own it,
tenant
then
of
what they do is, what happens is they sold the actual tower, okay, and then they lease it back.
Okay.
And so SBA is the actual landlord, where Sprint Nextel would have a lease, you know, to operate and pay the rent, and then AT&T is proposing below to be a tenant as well.
Okay.
Chair, a quick
Yes.
question for Barbara. Is this a conditional use?
Betty?
Do they have to come back every year, ask for permission?
They don't have to come back every year, but there's a...
We can draw them back, well, huh? So we could draw the original owners back and say, okay, we want stealth.
Yes.
I believe that there was a 5-year, I noticed in the ordinance when I was reviewing it today, I think that there's a renewal of the use permits required every 5 years per our ordinance. So I don't know when the last time that the underlying owner came back. And then the other question I have is, you know, one way to address this, if hypothetically, if this was placed as, you know, additional condition of approval, is it possible to retrofit this facility look like a tree, and therefore perhaps the tenant could address that with the lessor or the owner, you know, as something between the two of them?
Sure.
And the other tenant.
Yes.
They'd all have to play well together.
Well, it just seems to me that SBA if tenants come in for these approvals, let's say Verizon wants to go underneath AT&T or on top of Sprint, Verizon's going to come in and say the same thing. Like, "Hey, we're just co-locating. We're just, we don't want to incur the cost of creating a tree. How come you didn't make AT&T do it? How come you didn't make Sprint do it?" And then SBA doesn't ever have to come in to this room if tenants are the ones that are always coming in. So it's kind of a catch-22.
This tower the original tower was permitted prior to our current ordinance that has the condition that allows you to require the stealth.
Okay.
So the objective is to give you better coverage. It is the latest. The objective is to give the residents better coverage for that area. It is the latest of the technology. It's 4G LTE. So we're just trying to make sure that Hollister just stays in the forefront of this information age, because times have changed.
I appreciate that because I'm an AT&T customer. But I
we
also,
thank you.
You're welcome. But I also appreciate the stealth site too.
Yes.
And I think it benefits the county, it benefits that area, and it's like the chair said, it's a gorgeous little area up there. And then you come around the corner, and boy, the site just looms large.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and in all honesty, when we build our own towers and we own them, we most certainly try to be as stealth as we possibly can within a neighborhood, disguising it in many, many different ways. But when we don't own that facility, sometimes we're limited with what the design can actually be. So we ask you to approve the permit and allow us to give this constituents better coverage.
I don't know about the rest of the commission, but I see those commercials just about once a day on AT&T coverage versus Verizon coverage. So I know coverage is the name of the game in cell phone communications these days. Okay, any other questions for the applicant or their team? Okay, thank you very much. Some more things may come up in a minute.
Thank you.
Let's see if there's anyone else from the public that'd like to comment on this.
I might just make the point that, just responding to the earlier point, that the ordinance does favor co-location on existing structures, just to point that out.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, if there's no other public comment's closed. The conversation returns to the commission. Like I indicated earlier, I'll start, and I'd love to hear from you guys, but I don't see this ever becoming a tree unless something changes right now, even if a new tenant were to come on, because it's always going to be the same conundrum, which is we're just a tenant, we don't own it. AT&T and Sprint didn't have to. And on the other hand, it doesn't really seem equitable to condition approval of AT&T's addition of these panels upon the construction of a tree and the cost of that, which Sprint and the owner would benefit from at no cost to them. Of course, the biggest beneficiary would be the community and the public, and not having to look at something like that. I'm sorry, it was Dr. something, Saxton?
Yeah, I want to show you what the photo sent, which looks a lot better than
Yeah,
what he's showing.
that's not a. I've seen.
Did you see?
Well, no, but I've seen him in the past, and it's like you use Photoshop and try to recreate what it would look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question now. If you want to go to the microphone, because maybe I have an out-of-the-box idea here, where everybody wins. Win, 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 win.
We look for those. Okay.
Sprint, AT&T, owner, and community. Everybody wins. What if we were to, I'm just thinking out loud with you now, what if we were to continue this item to January? You wouldn't necessarily have to come back. You could send somebody local. I'm assuming you're from out of the area. In order to give you enough time to propose an agreement with Sprint and the owner that San Bernardino County would like to have a tree tower there, the cost of which should be divided equitably between the owner, Sprint, AT&T, so that you wouldn't bear the expense of that on your own.
Okay, I'm going to have Tom address that for just a moment, because
Okay.
there's some issues with that request.
Okay.
Okay.
Along those lines, what I would propose for consideration would be to an approve with a condition, that the condition be that the approval be based upon not the existing design, but on a stealth design such as a tree. And the responsibility will be AT&T's to figure out who and how.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't want to continue it because we're going to end up with the same thing.
Okay.
Mr.
No,
Chair?
that's fine. That's fine. I just
No.
I think that's a great idea. If we approve it with that condition, and then it's up to you to try to get reimbursed for the cost of that and so forth, that's great. I was just trying to think of a way to make it
I
equitable
appreciate
for
that.
you.
It's along the same lines.
Right, it
just
is.
that I don't want to get into the details of how we handle things with carriers, et cetera.
No, you don't,
know?
and we don't care.
Right.
How you were to make that happen, to bear the cost of the tree construction. If you can figure it out, that's fine.
And Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner
if we give them permission tonight, and then they can take that back to the cell owner and say, hey, look, we have permission. We are going to be a tenant. We'll pay you, but these conditions have to be approved.
Right.
And I'd like to see you come back just for that approval, just so we know what tree it looks like and all that. But with full approval now, so you can take it back to your group and say, hey, look, they'll do it, but we have to change this to a stealth site now.
Yeah, and as far as the coming back now part of that, Commissioner Pierce, what would you think about this? If we do it as you suggested, approve it tonight with the condition that it looked like a tree, you then redo this to show us what the tree thing's going to look like, and then we can just put it maybe on the consent agenda to just take a look at it in January.
Yeah.
Consent agenda means boom, you're done.
Okay.
Yeah, just like an architectural review, kind of.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would provide revised photo sims to duplicate a tree as well as revised elevations.
Right.
That sounds great to me.
That sound good?
Yeah, sounds great to
Is that
me.
good?
Everybody else? Okay.
Everybody's happy?
That, like I said, win-win-win, so that's great. All right. Commissioner Pierce, would you care to make a motion?
Sure, whatever he said, just put that down, and I'll make a motion for that. I'd like to move that we approve the permit 1080-13 with the finding conditions of approval by staff and by the commission right now. That work?
If we could work out the additional condition of approval for the planning commission, so approval. We'll add some specific language.
Okay.
How about,
Okay.
Okay.
condition of approval number 3, whatever.
Be 15.
15, like, stealth design shall be utilized.
Can I make a motion to take a break for 1 minute? I'll run to the restroom while county council's writing that. Is that okay?
You can't make a motion while the motion's on the table, but I think I think
make
you
a
can
motion to use
sneak
the
away,
restroom really
though,
fast?
you know? It's
Approved by planning commission prior to the issuance of the building permit.
Okay, so stealth design shall be utilized, approved by the planning commission prior to. Okay.
Business need a building permit.
Yeah.
Issuance of building permit. Is that okay?
Yeah, shall be and approved,
Because it needs a building permit.
yes.
Shall be
Issued
told.
prior to. Okay, we've got a suggested condition of approval number 15. Stealth design shall be utilized and approved by the planning commission prior to issuance of a building permit.
perfect.
Make it so.
So, Commissioner Pierce, you want to restate the motion to include, or does your motion then include the proposed amendment by staff and county council?
Staff conditions are included in the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your cooperation on that. It's going to, I think, turn out to be a better thing for the community. Good luck. If you want, if you'd like to, but that's up to you.
All right. I'm just over in Monterey.
Okay.
Thanks,
Happy holidays.
You as well.
You too.
Okay, turning now to agenda item 7. The applicant is it Nunes or Nunes? Nunes?
Nunes.
Nunes, okay. Nunes. Location
Nunes,
1897 McCloskey Road, and the planner is Mr. Krause. Michael.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Michael Krause, Associate Planner, presenting minor subdivision 1230-13, Nunes. The project applicant proposes to subdivide one 2.48 acre parcel into two 1.46 and 1.02 acre parcels, respectively. No development or grading is proposed as part of this project at this time. The site currently contains one single-family residence, 2 sheds, and 1 barn. The project proposes to use conventional septic systems for sewage disposal. And there was an environmental evaluation done. An initial study was prepared and circulated for the project. This circulation period was from November 27th, 2013 to December 16th, 2013, and no comments were received during that time frame. A mitigated negative declaration has been proposed as a result of the findings made during the preparation and circulation of the initial study. Staff would like to make a slight minor modification to the recommendation that you see in your staff reports. The revised recommendation is as follows. Staff recommend that the Planning Commission adopt both the proposed mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program and approve minor subdivision 1230-13 based upon the required subdivision and CEQA findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained within the staff report. And I am available for any questions.
Michael, I'm going to make you say that again.
Oh, sure.
Your amendments. Okay, so
Sure.
right now we have staff recommends that the Planning Commission, 1, make the required CEQA findings and minor subdivision findings set forth in the staff report. And then you want to include what else?
Just a moment.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're going to pass these out to them. Just so they
I have
it.
not. We can, definitely. You want me to go ahead?
Yeah,
and do that?
yeah.
Sure.
That's one.
We're going to pass out the mitigation monitoring program. The mitigation monitoring program is all of the mitigation measures for the initial study. I'm going to pass those out to you.
Thank you.
So what you just received are the mitigations that are shown in the initial study and also contained in conditions of approval of the staff report. So nothing is new that you're seeing there. There is an explanation of the method that these mitigations are carried out and departments as well. And as for the revision to the recommendation, the revision basically is including the adoption of the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, which is what you have in front of you. And I can go ahead and read that over again if
No,
you would like.
Let me see if I got it right.
Okay.
You recommend that the Planning Commission, 1, make the required CEQA and minor subdivision findings set forth in the staff report, 2, adopt the negative declaration and adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and 3, approve MS 1230-13?
Correct, except for one minor change would be adopt the mitigated negative declaration, not negative declaration.
Oh, mitigated neg deck, right. Missing the word mitigated there. Okay. Any questions of Michael from the Commission? Nope. Thank you, Michael. Is the owner Applicant, Ann, is that you? You want to say anything?
Do you have a map on the?
I do.
Can you put that up?
Yep, absolutely. There you go.
My name is Ann Hall with San Benito Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. The applicant's also here if you have any specific questions to be answered. But I have one condition that I would like the commission to consider changing. And it's one I've talked to Michael about. He knows, and I understand where he's coming from, but I'd like you to look at it from the applicant's perspective. And that's, it has to do with condition number 20. Now, as you look at this, I know when you started reading this, Dan, you said it had a McCloskey Road address. This property is actually located on a spur off of McCloskey Road. It was a cul-de-sac off an easement that was done in the mid-'70s, late '70s.
Okay.
It's commonly known as Shoney's Way. See, I didn't even know that, but it's commonly known as Shoney's Way, but the official name is McCloskey Road.
So that's going to be the name of the road?
Well, that's the question. When this subdivision was done, this road, although it's not McCloskey Road, was not given its own name. The addresses are McCloskey Road for the people who live on this small little cul-de-sac, and there were 4 or 5 lots. I think there's one other house. It's not in many houses, but the county has a number of these type situations where maybe roads were created without a name or without under the same guidelines that we use today. By all rights, this should be renamed to something other than McCloskey. The addresses should be something other than McCloskey. In fact, the county knows this. They have what's called an addressing committee that's been dealing with this throughout the county and going around and trying to clean up these small isolated cases. And this is exactly the kind of stuff that is on the agenda for that addressing committee to clean up. So the requirement in here, though, puts the burden on the applicant in this particular case, who is subdividing the property on this technically unnamed road, to come up with the name of the road, poll the neighbors, suggest the name of the road. I think it puts the neighbor in an awkward position to be told to name this road and therefore change all their neighbors' addresses when there's already a county committee doing this in other areas of the county, and it seems to me this would be an easier thing handled but coming from the county rather than coming from the neighbor when they're only part of the road. Now, I know Michael's going to say that there's something in the ordinance saying when a subdivision occurs, any unnamed roads be named. And we all know that that's usually what happens when you create a subdivision, because you create the roads within the subdivision that are, accessing your new parcels you're creating. And the only people on those roads are the new parcels you're creating. So it's no big deal to name a road. But I just think in this particular case, for the subdivision, for the type of what's happening, it kind of puts an awkward burden on the applicant to name a road that involves not just her property, but other properties as well, when it's a known problem in the county.
It just seems like a switch that you want the government to take control of something that you could decide yourself. Don't people normally want to have that control? What if they come up with some wacky name that everybody hates? Can't you have a little fun with it and have like a contest or have a poll of the neighbors or something?
Oh, I think it'd be a great meeting. We want to call it Nunez Road. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Approved by staff. The name would need to be approved by.
Would have to go.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, you really want to, your request then is to just turn this over to the government to decide?
The government already has a body in action that's deciding those things.
All right. That's the request. That's the request.
Well,
That's my
question, though,
request.
before you get going on this, and it turns into a snowball. Didn't staff already state that this sort of little nub sort of already had a name?
Yes, but actually I did not know that till he just mentioned that to me. So
what's wrong with continuing that name if it's already sort of
because I'm sure
already
that's
named this
not
way?
what people have to use. It's probably not what they use on their mailing.
No, it's not. And this happened to me. Have you heard of a little street out on Santa Ana called Gardenia? That used to be Santa Ana Road. Right, Armand? Yeah. In 1990, and then the owner decided he wanted to call it Sanchez. Everyone hated that guy, so of course they didn't want to vote for that name. So I can totally understand where you're going with that. And daffodil was down the street, so they picked another flower. So why don't we just call it the name that everyone's sort of calling it anyway and move on?
we can do that. My only comment on that was, if the county says we're changing this name and making it officially what everyone's calling it, it was a little different. If you have a neighbor who doesn't want to change the name of the road, that doesn't want to change their official listings on whatever magazines they get or whatever like that, I just feel that it kind of puts the neighbor in an awkward position.
Sure.
And when it's something the county's already in the process of doing, and it's something they probably would have got to eventually on this road anyway, why can't it go through that process?
I suppose it could.
Okay.
Seems to me like something you'd want to have more control over, but it's up to you. So that's a request. Is that the only proposed revision you have to the conditions of approval on the staff report, Ann?
Yes, that's the only one.
Okay, thank you.
So are you asking that that be removed, though, right, Ann? You just want it removed?
Deleted. Okay, any other comments from the public? If not, public comments closed. Back to the commission. Any further questions? Or Steve, did you have something to say?
Yeah, if I could just make a real quick comment. Steve Wittry, County Public Works. There is a process by which the county is doing that. Naming, as you are well aware, county staffing is at probably a low for the last several years. Something like this, although it may have a burden, there may be a process that happens. Time is really of the essence with something like this. Something like this as a situation. As we all are well aware, the county recently adopted a new fire contract for fire response with City of Hollister. Those folks do not know the little niches and notches of county. So they require addresses to be accurate. Something like this, where we have an opportunity to do that, would happen more quickly, more expeditiously through the applicant process. So just take that into consideration.
So, but just to make sure we understand what you're saying, so then, therefore, you would disfavor having this committee come up with a name and instead would like to see the applicant come up with a name.
As the condition states.
As it states. And your motivation for that is one of the
Public
time
safety.
it would take?
Public safety and expeditious of time.
No, well, obviously, yeah, we need a new name. Everyone can agree on that. But as to whether the county comes up with the name or the applicant comes up with the name, you say applicant because it's faster?
Applicant, because at this point in time, with our current staffing levels, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Particularly if there's a name that's already been the customary name. Because what has to happen in the name process, they would come up with something. It would have to go to this committee to make sure there's no confusion with existing street names, so that there's not a Shoney's Way or another name similar to that in town or some other location. So when it's called over the radio frequencies, they know where they're going precisely.
Right, but what I hear them saying is they're not going to come up with anything. They're delegating the entire process to you. In which case, does that shorten the amount of time it would take for the committee to come up with
The
something?
committee, like I said, does not meet very regularly because of the staffing situations.
Oh.
Matter of fact, I don't recall the last time I actually met.
Really?
Because of staffing situations. So
And
there is a committee that's out there.
You've been the director now for what, 3 years?
Actually, 4.5.
Jeez, time flies, huh? Okay.
Time flies.
But if they need to approve whatever's submitted, they need to meet too.
That's true. Do they have to meet to approve whatever? If we say, okay, well, sorry, but you guys do have to come up with the name. Do they have to meet to approve that?
It has to go through a process. It has to be circulated to the communications divisions, which would be medical response, fire, police, communications.
Usually they come up with like 3-4 names. And then
Right. So usually what they do is they come up with a suite of names. More than likely, the Shoney's name, which a lot of people have come to know, would be used as one alternative. We would ask that they come up with 2 or 3 in case that one was too close to. When they do these testings, they run it into radio and they say Shoney's Way, and does it sound like Johnny's Way? I don't know. So that maybe it's just close to something else. So they go through that process to try to determine that it will have a unique sound when it's broadcast over the radio frequency.
Yeah, and there's a street name, Shoshone.
Right.
Which,
so if that's too close in their estimation, they would not like that name. They would request an alternative name be chosen. So the request would be that they come up with a suite of names, 2 or 3, that could be looked at in their preferred order, and then that would be assigned.
Hey, Ann. Thank you, Steve. Hey, Ann, how many residents are we talking about that are be affected by this name change? 4, 5, 2? 8? I don't know about it. Okay.
8, apparently, but the applicants know better than I do. Even coming up with the name is, if they have to do that, but what's the process by which the neighbors are notified? To me, the coming up with the name is really the easy part. Everything else associated with what this addressing committee does, how do the neighbors get notified? How does this happen? What do they do to fulfill this condition? They just turn in some names? I mean, it seemed like an open-ended condition that affects more than simply them.
It seems like something that we shouldn't get hung up on too much. If I lived there, I would send a letter to each one of the 8 people saying, please write down 4 of your favorite names, send them to me, and then send out a list and have everybody vote. Just of the 8. Just do it democratically. If you get 3 names for Gardenia, if Gardenia wins. Send it to Steve or whomever. Boom, you're done. What's so hard about that?
Okay, you know how neighbors are.
Well, just use the democratic process or something. You're hearing from the Director of Public Works saying if you delegate to him, it's going to take forever. And your whole project's going to get hung up.
It is not. If we delegate it, either it's going to be a condition of approval of this map or it's not. And if it is, they'll live with it. What I'm saying, I don't think it's a fair burden to put on this project. You can approve it with it on there.
He just said this committee hasn't met, and he's been there 4.5 years. He can't recall the last time they met. Do you really want this entire thing hung up because of a street name?
I don't want it hung up at all. And if it's, what I'm saying is...
Come up with the name.
They can come up with the name.
Okay.
I'm saying, why isn't...
He said he would if he had a whole bunch of staff and all the money in the world, but he doesn't, and they haven't met in 4.5 years.
We can come up with a name. We'll turn it into this non-existent committee. Okay. That's all the further the applicant can do with it, is turn it into them.
It sounds like the most efficient... I totally understand where you're coming from, but it sounds like if what you want to do is get this done, that's the way to go.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Pierce.
Okay, let's say you're adding what, 2 more addresses?
1.
1 address.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we just leave the name alone and it's still McCloskey Road and you add the additional numbers?
Because that's not what the condition's saying we have to do.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We just remove this, you put a McCloskey address on the thing, and when the committee revisits this kind of stuff, then they can deal with it in that time.
For the purposes of getting this passed, we'll just drop it, and they'll leave the condition as is. But I think it is not a realistic condition for this situation, and I don't agree with it. So at least I just want to be on record saying that I don't think this is a proper responsibility. I don't think this is going to speed up the process any.
No.
But if it's that big a deal, we'll just move on with it because she wants to get her map done. But
And you know how we did it
Mm-hmm.
on Gardenia? There was a letter, went out to everyone. Only instead of saying, what name do you think you'd like, there was 4 names. You check the one you like next to that name, you turn it back in, and whatever came in a week with the largest number of votes won. It was pretty simple. And there was twice as many people.
okay, we'll go forward with that.
Or we can go with Sanchez.
I think Ann Hall Drive sounds really good. What do you think of that? Put that down as one of those.
I'll make sure they put that as an option.
Okay. We solved that problem of the world. Michael, anything else?
No.
No more public comment? Public comment's closed. Back to the commission. Are there any further questions, comments? If not, is there a motion?
Holy moly.
Pardon?
Holy moly. For the record, I would like to make a motion that we, what the heck are we? That we accept the minor subdivision set forth in the staff report, adopt the mitigated negative declaration, and also the mitigation monitoring program, and approve MS 1230-13 with all the conditions set forth by staff and commission. How'd I do?
And the subdivision and CEQA findings?
That too, in the subdivision and CEQA findings. Darn, I missed that one.
You notice county
Perfect.
council never says, "That was perfect."
It was perfect.
She always has something to add.
It was
on.
perfect.
She's earning her pay.
Thank you, Commissioner Pierce. Is there a second to Commissioner Pierce's motion?
I'll second.
Commissioner Culler seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I think that does it. Is there a motion to, oh, no, I'm
can
sorry,
give you,
discussion item, general plan update. Discussion on the status of the comprehensive general plan. Byron, I assume that's you.
Yes, yesterday the Board of Supervisors approved the contract with EMC Planning Group to complete, to revise the general plan and complete the process. So the next step, after they review all the materials and get their footings, is we are going to have that joint meeting that's been requested by the Planning Commission and the Board, so we can outline the process and where we go from here and make sure everybody is on the same page and has the same goals and objectives to carry this through. They have a timeline of approximately 10 months. That's an ambitious timeline. But we stressed at the board yesterday that...
Byron?
Yes?
Can you just hold on one sec? Hey, Annie? Annie, can you guys maybe talk to the lawyer in the lobby? Sorry to interrupt your conversation. We just can't hear Byron that well. No problem. Good luck with your project. You bet. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
You bet.
So just wanted, what we stressed yesterday and what we'll stress again is, the fewer changes to the document, the quicker this is going to go, and the easier it's going to be. I don't believe there are a whole lot of changes, but if we start getting property owners in here requesting multiple designation changes, then that is going to add to the price tag. That's going to add to the time. We're not going to write and release the environmental impact report until we close the door on the general plan. That's part of the problem that happened this time. The first time is that we released the environmental impact report, and all of a sudden people came out with, I have a problem with the plan. Well, the plan was changed in certain ways as the process went, most notably changing the level of service from C to D. So that changed the environmental document that had already been drafted, which is what caused the cost to go up. That's what caused the timing to go up. So once we're in agreement, this is what's going to be in the general plan, then we shut that door and we're done, and then the environmental work will begin. So that's one of the main changes to it. So probably, if not January, then February, looking to have this special meeting, joint meeting between the board and the Planning Commission to lay out where we go from here.
Excellent. I think that was a good summary of the roadmap ahead. Like any road, there are mileposts and signposts along the way. And I assume then that this joint meeting with the board will be to establish those mile markers.
Yeah.
And maybe assign dates to them. From at 30,000 feet, and this is my own personal opinion, I think that the prior process suffered from the lack of Planning Commission oversight and involvement. And the director and I have had some conversations about this where I've kind of volunteered on behalf of the commission to play a more active role in the process that you just described. So, and I think I speak on behalf of the commission that we're willing to do that, to keep things going, keep them moving, and not get bogged down like as happened before. Is there any other comment or thoughts from anyone? Commissioner Lowe?
I have a couple of questions of staff. EMC, how many general plans have they done, Byron? Do you know?
I did not bring their RFP with me, so I don't recall the number, but they are experienced in doing general plans in California. Right now, they are working on the City of Gilroy's general plan. So we know they have local experience. They do work for the City of Hollister as well and Monterey County. I don't have a number for you as far as how many general plans that they've done, though, but they were obviously qualified based on the information that they provided the county.
But they've done the whole general plan, not just
Yes.
parts of a general plan with another consultant.
Yes, they've done the whole general plan as well as the environmental work.
And at the board meeting yesterday, I got a little confused from what the chair was saying. It brought it back. They were talking about individual property owners coming forward with requests. Now, that will be handled in a public meeting before the Planning Commission. Staff's not going to be doing that. And the consultants will not be doing that, just meeting with people and changing the document? Is that
No,
correct?
no, it'll all be done in a public forum, and I think the appropriate place would be the Planning Commission, although you can't stop people from showing up to every meeting and making requests, and I anticipate that's going to happen. It's going to be up to the commission and the board to say, okay, that's it, no more requests.
But that will be happening at a public
It
meeting?
will be happening in a public meeting, yes.
Okay. And there's no thought of putting another committee together to do anything? It's now basically at the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors level, is that correct?
So far, yes, but when we have this joint meeting, if that's something that we want to discuss, we can put it on the agenda.
But then that would just slow the process.
You probably would, yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. It would slow the process down, and I think it also presents the risk of a new committee going to wander off into the woods again, and whereas we can kind of ride herd on it and make sure that it gets done in a timely manner. Right, anyone else?
Question, the supervisors at one time were talking about an ad hoc kind of a committee for general plan. That's not in place anymore, right?
Well, they kind of tabled that issue to discuss later once we got the consultant on board and once we had this joint meeting with the Planning Commission.
Okay. Because I think the ad hoc, from my understanding of it, the ad hoc plan was a group wandering off into the woods too, and so it would seem to keep, if you kept the full boards together, both the commission and the supervisors as a whole most of the time, it would also qualify all the information and everything as a workshop or a public document to where we could run through the process as we go, and it would expedite everything.
I agree with that. Commissioner Rodriguez, any thoughts on the general plan update process?
I think that you modify a little bit.
Okay.
That's my opinion. Because there's a lot of land that they want for open space, which is really not good for anything. But I think it should be the industrial manufacturing side, part of it.
We don't have very much
We don't,
zoned industrial in this county, that's true.
Yeah, because I see we're just making bedrooms, and it's not going to help the economy. I don't care how you slice it, the bedroom community does not sustain the county. We need the industrial and the commercial more than anything else. So my opinion is maybe it's when someone wants to develop something, let's put in some industrial parks in that development or some commercial parks, which is not addressed in the general plan.
Okay.
The overlay for the wine trail is, and essentially large traffic areas in the current general plan are actually commercial. And you could end up changing and putting much more commercial in it in the new general plan, which is why I'm kind of in favor of getting this puppy rolled out sooner.
Yeah.
The wine overlay trail would allow all types of cottage little commercial elements.
But we need industrial to keep,
Well, and then general commercial and other elements out on the larger traffic ways, those are all part of the general plan as well.
I look more at the industrial
print it
side
out
of
for you.
We're not going to design the general plan tonight.
But
So those are all.
that's my opinion.
See, you've got motivated commissioners chomping at the bit to talk about the general plan, Byron. So we look.
We'll talk about residential too sometime, because those manufacturing groups, they need to have employees.
Yes, of course.
And buyers.
Commissioner Culler, any thoughts? No.
Come on, Jeff, jump in.
There's a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Culler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. See you in January.